Well, a New York Times article is going viral on X for describing Democrats' plans to, you guessed it, find their own Joe Rogan.
The article is titled, "6 Months Later, Democrats Are Still Searching for the Path Forward." The specific part of the article that grabbed many people's attention reads, quote, "The prospectus for the one new $20 million effort obtained by the Times aims to reverse the erosion of Democratic support among young men, especially online. It is code-named SAM, for short, Speaking with American Men, a Strategic Plan, and promises the investment to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces. It recommends buying advertisements in video games that Robby just played this weekend, among other things."
Meanwhile, podcaster Tim Pool joined Bill Maher's Club Random podcast this week. The two discussed why young men have shifted toward Christianity and are voting Republican. Let's listen.
One thing I think is true is that conservatives had more kids in the 2000s. I know a lot of people want to claim these ideological victories where they say, like, we've red-pilled people. And among Gen Z, irrespective of that, there's been a rightward ideological shift among men. And I think this has to do with contemporary politics, movies, games, culture, etc.
And also men feeling that they were targeted unfairly. There is a lot of toxicity in being maleness. Some of that we can't control.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom in what they were saying there. I obviously talked a little bit about this in my radar last week. It's fairly obvious the variety of reasons that young men have shifted to the right. Those things that they're mentioning, pop culture, video games, etc., podcasts. It used to be the case that not everything in our lives was political. Sports isn't necessarily political, and not all entertainment is political. There's a political dimension to some of it, but not all of it. But in these times where everything is so political and so high stakes at the presidential election level, politics has really seeped into everything, and it's also filled where this is for. It's all consistent now. If you watch these things, you like these things, you participate in these things, these are your activities, then you are a Republican who likes Trump. If you like these things and you have these cultural preferences and you associate with these people and you live in these places, then you are a liberal Democrat who likes cultural progressivism. And there's less and less overlap. Didn't used to be the case. If you go back, 50 years, there were people who, voted for a local Republican but had mostly Democratic friends, and maybe they voted for John Kennedy for president because they liked how he looked on TV. There was, you know what I mean? It was back. It wasn't all
some nuance in voting.
It was right. It was more like you're part of a club, and that membership has all sorts of different cast of characters and different preferences. Now you're all getting this is everything. These are all the characteristics of these people, and these are all the characteristics of these people. So young men increasingly get slotted into this category. The preferences they have, the things they like, are associated with the right. Can Democrats fix this problem by a strategic action plan costing millions and millions of dollars to grow in a laboratory Blue Rogan, Dem Rogan? I don't think so.
I think that they should avoid chasing the shiny new object, right? They tried that throughout Kamala's whole campaign, and it didn't really work. Even if the objects weren't new, they were like legendary stars that they brought to the table. These tactics don't work with hey, look at this. This is really popular. We're doing it now. I think the policy is really what matters. Talking back to those working class Americans that they lost. Somehow the Republican Party, the one to trickle down, became the working class party. And I don't know how we have these different conversations that 10 years ago we wouldn't have had. And I also think that Trump is an anomaly. So now that he can't run again in 4 years, we're going to have a different conversation around who the next two candidates are. And I think we might see a sway back to some normalcy of what the parties look like if both parties continue to fall in line. Like if Trump pushes through his tax cuts, if Democrats get back to the source and do some of the things that Bernie Sanders is calling for, is to get back to the people that we represented back in the day. I think that some of those can shift, but they need to just focus on what policies they want to put forward, and just think about what are we standing for in the midterms, what are we standing for in 2028. And the biggest problem to me with Democrats is that they complained throughout Trump's entire presidency. They complained about how bad it was, the end of democracy. They compared him several times to Hitler, but then the plan was mediocre at best. When it was time for Biden to run again, they made that decision. His team protected him in ways that we're understanding more now, put Kamala forward at the last minute. That wasn't a good strategy. So what we have to do is just recognize that that wasn't good, look back at what could have been fixed, and not repeat history again. And part of that is just throwing money at the problem and trying to be popular and cool. That doesn't work, and I think real strategy does work.
You know, I saw an idea come across my Twitter feed, I think, over the weekend. I can't remember who I saw who proposed this. And it was one of those things where it was almost like a light bulb. I read this idea, this plan for the Democrats, and it's so brilliant, and it's probably true. And it would make me hate the Democratic Party even more, but if they did this, but it's probably a good idea. Concede defeat. The trajectory for young men and for many minority groups for the Democrats is so bad, the working class so bad, you could just, again, I don't think this would make the party a better, have more appealing ideas. No, you just give up. You say, nope, okay, Republicans have won all those people. No. Then you double down on your messaging to the group. You got to make sure, so nope, we're not getting any more working class people. We're not getting any more young men. We're losing black men. We are going to get every affluent white in this country, every black woman, every senior, and a majority of women overall. We're going to double down on those core groups. No more sorry, Latinos, you're lost to us. Young men, you're lost to us. People who make under certain income threshold, we're not bothering with you unless you're a black woman because we still have appeal to them. And we're going to get every old person who is worried about having their Medicare taken from them. We will bust them to the polls. Every old person, you are ours. Every college-educated person, every affluent person, you're ours. We will double and triple and quadruple down on our messaging to these people. We don't care about labor unions anymore. We don't care about the working class. We don't care about, we have no appeal to these people. They don't want us. We can't win them. It's lost. I saw this in a tweet and I was thinking, you know what? I think that's probably the right strategy.
No.
I don't think I wouldn't want the Democratic Party to be like that because I would hate its policies. A party only catering substantially to old voters who want to extract more wealth from younger people is a party I would despise, but it would probably do better electorally, right? Tell me if you think in the comments that I'm wrong. I saw this idea and I'm like, you know what? That might actually be the strategy.
Americans, we have to give ourselves and all voters more credit, right? There was a slew of voters that were interested in hearing what Nikki Haley had to say, just to propel her enough to be competitive. And although she didn't make it to the finish line, there were still people that really liked her and were like, I got to figure out if I'm in the middle. I don't know if I want to go Democratic, but I don't know if I love Trump. And some people just ended up going behind the curtain or mailing in their ballot and making their decision. But I think most Americans, even though the internet likes to pretend like we're just so starkly divided, can't even have a conversation, most Americans fall somewhere in the center left, center right. And so I think that there is room to pull those people either left or right with policy. And I think that some people were just tired of Democrats litigating Trump endlessly. I mean, civilly, federally. It was just like endlessly. And they're like, you have no strategy. You're just constantly trying to put this man behind bars and wanted a real plan of action. And they didn't see one. And I think that that was the issue as opposed to them not liking the Democratic Party at all. So I do think there's a huge opportunity. But to be 5 or 6 months into the new year and this is what they're throwing at the New York Times, seems like a repeat of history to me. That is going to be a sad mistake on their part after years of complaining.
To push back on my own argument, the validity of the strategy you just outlined is that now I think there is a very, very small subset of persuadable. I don't agree with you that there's just massive people right in the middle who can go either way. But where you are right, or I agree with you on, there is a small number of those people, but they are disproportionately important because they are in Michigan and Pennsylvania. There is that, you call it 2%, 3%, 5%. I think it's really like 5% of the electorate. But if you win them over, you're going to win the election regardless. So you can say none of the messaging to anybody else matters if you can get that small slice of persuadable people in the 2 to 5 swing states. That is the whole ball game. So
there's
I guess that's
overwhelming amount of conversation. Let's say take a subset of this group, like black men, for example. I don't think that they're overwhelmingly Republican all of a sudden. I think they didn't find any solace in the Democratic Party after years of knowing that their wives and counterparts have been supporting this blindly up in the 80s and 90s of percent. They're like, look, I'm doing my own thing, which respectfully, that's a decision to make. Mm-hmm. I don't think if there's not a Trump on the table who is advocating looking for those black votes, that if we go back to traditional conservatives that perhaps we're just running and not looking specifically to cater to that group of people, then that vote might sway back Democratic or independent.
If it works without Trump is still an open question. We don't know that yet. That's That is
because, like you said, Ron DeSantis, there were a bunch of names thrown
you're
in the hat.
talking me down.
Yeah, there were a bunch of names in the hat, and no one really loved them. So if they were up against Kamala, would they have won? Nobody knows. And Kamala, maybe not a great candidate or example because of the way that entire campaign played out. But if they were up against a strong Democratic candidate that had a lot of support, would they beat Trump, like a Ron DeSantis or a Nikki Haley? We don't know. I mean, would they beat a Democrat? We don't know.
We don't know. I mean, polls showed Nikki Haley. I mean, I think it showed them both, actually, Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, doing even better against Biden than Trump was doing. Now, whether that would have been the case on the election day or spilled over to Kamala is not a known. We don't know that for sure, but interesting. All right, more to talk about still on Rising. Stay with us.